not suffering or permitting us. We sailed under Crete over against Salmon. Now, from what I'm looking, when I look at the map, I'm thinking to myself, okay, not being a sailor or the son of a sailor, if I had to chart a course to get from where they started to where they wanted to get, I would have stuck as close to the shoreline the whole route over till I finally arrive at Italy. But if you look at a map and you'll see the journey itself, they went way south. They dipped deep down into the Mediterranean Sea to get where they were going to go. Now, they have to get to Rome. Don't ever lose track of this, that one man on board this vessel ensures that there will be safe passage for him to his destination. Paul was going to Rome. That was divinely ordained. Doesn't make any difference the storm. He's going to Rome. But to get there, the winds were contrary, slow. And verse 8 says, and hardly passing it, they came unto a place which is called the Fair Havens. Now that name sounds like a place you might want to dock for a while. Winter is coming on. They shouldn't have been in the water at this time of the year anyway in that part of the world. So you come to Fair Havens, but the verse says, where it was near, and when much time was spent, when sailing was now dangerous because the fast was now already past, Paul admonished them. And he said, sirs, I perceive that this voyage will be with hurt and much damage, not only of the lading and the ship, but also of our lives. Now think about that. Here's the warning from a guy, though not a sailor, he likely had a few experiences in the water himself. Not because he would want to be, but because that's where he was put. So he gives this warning. He gives the warning, and concerning the winds of providence, please understand as we read on, nevertheless the centurion believed the master and the owner of the ship more than those things which were spoken by Paul. And because the haven, the Fair Haven, was not commodious to winter in, I'm thinking the accommodations weren't probably 5-star. The more part, the majority. Listen, I'll take this lesson too. Sometimes the majority is wrong. And sometimes those who are in the know, like the mariners, can be wrong. Okay? That vessel that sailed out of Baltimore on its way out of the harbor should never have left dock because of their electrical problems, and the master of the ship knew it. He knew it. Nevertheless, don't get that rabbit trail. They said that they wanted to depart, if by any means that they might attain to Phoenix, there to winter, which is the haven of Crete, and lieth toward the southwest and northwest. So we have the winds of providence. And the note that I would bring to your attention in this text is this. Even though Paul knew that he would ultimately get to Rome, he was not in any way fatalistic or presumptuous. He didn't have the attitude, look, I know I'm going there. God says I'm going to go there, going to see Caesar. I'm appealing to him. And it doesn't make any difference what you guys decide to do with this boat. I'm going to arrive there. Sink or swim. And basically it would be both. So understand this, that providence, God's providence sometimes allows for a delay in our schedule. Sometimes God's providence allows for a delay. We see God's providence from our vantage point as a straight line venture, from a starting point to a concluding point. And yet along the way, there can be slowdowns, pull aside, just stop, take it easy. You don't have to be a fool. So there they are. Their decision, in spite of the weather, in spite of the season, they decided to venture out. Then we come to verse 13, where we see the winds of peril. When the south wind blew softly. Now, I don't know about you, but when I'm sitting on my porch in the summertime and that soft breeze comes out of the south, So warm and relaxing. It's hard to stay awake sitting in a chair. It's just wonderful. But yet sometimes it can trick you, because on the heels of that soft south breeze can come terrible, terrible winds. So is the case here. Supposing they guessed, and listen, the advice here is, don't sail in the storm. Don't sail in the storm. Stay afloat in safe harbor. Faith does not need to be presumptuous. So when they supposed that they had the breeze they wanted, they obtained their purpose. Loosing thence, they sailed close by Crete. Smart. But, verse 14, the wind of peril. Not long after, there arose against it a tempestuous wind called Euroclydon, or what we would translate a nor'easter. A nor'easter, okay? Terrible storm, wind of peril. And when you see in verse 15, when the ship was caught and could not bear up into the wind, we let her drive. What else could they do? They're no longer in control of their destination. It makes no difference. The compass makes no difference. The chart makes no difference. The expertise of the pilot of the ship, they had to leave her drive. It's just a floating mass. And running under a certain island, which is called Clauda, we had much work to come by the boat. Much work. Who wants to work on a cruise? Which when they had taken up, they used helps, undergirding the ship, and fearing lest they should fall into the quicksand, struck sail, and so were driven. When we think about the winds of peril, we notice also in verse 18, being exceedingly tossed with a tempest. They did a couple things. So let me stop here and pick up a trail. When you think about the winds of peril, you're going to follow this track down to the things that they tried to do, but you arrive at verse 20, where it says their hope was taken away. Their hope was taken away, when neither sun or stars in many days appeared. No small tempest lay on us. All hope that we should be saved was taken away. Just a note. When mortality becomes reality without hope, in spite of all the precautionary, the preventives that they tried to employ, like for example, they used helps. They strapped the ship. The same word there, helps, is found over in Hebrews chapter 4:16, when it invites us to come to the throne of grace to find help in time of need. It means to be frapped or strapped around the belly of the ship to try to keep it from falling all apart in a storm. That's the first thing they tried to do. And fearing lest they should fall into the quicksand, they struck sail, brought it down. And so were driven, and being exceedingly tossed with the tempest, the next day they lightened the ship. They lightened it. You know, one of the things, the last thing to go on this cruise would be their food. The last thing to go would be their food. But what they did throw out, according to verse 19, was with their own hands they did this, the tackling of the ship, the deck furnitures and all the little accoutrements surrounding the doorways and the hatches and all that went overboard. And what was they trying to do? They were trying to make the vessel lighter. A vessel, and James would be better able to comment on this than I, a vessel that is heavy laden in heavy waters is likely to be washed over. So they had to lighten it. They had to lighten that vessel. And then when they didn't get any daylight, going on for a period of time, many days it says here, we see that they had strapped the ship, they struck sail, and they stripped the ship of all of its furniture. Which brings us to verse 21. The winds of promise. So all this is going on. And there's Paul, probably sitting down somewhere below hatch. He just not saying a word. Not saying a word. After all, he said his piece at the beginning. You shouldn't do this. Sitting down in a long abstinence. All the hustle and the bustle and the fury of the storm, everything there, he's not saying a word. But after he did a long absence, Paul stood forth in the midst of them. And he said, sirs, You should have hearkened. Told you. You should have hearkened unto me and not have loosed from Crete and to have gained this harm and loss. Now keep in mind, the storm, not this storm or any storm, just happens. It doesn't just happen. Everything that comes your way and mine, and in the way of our neighbors and friends, is all by divine design for an express, sometimes very obscure purpose that God has. And so they're here in this storm, and Paul was giving it to them. He says, now, verse 22, I exhort you to be of good cheer. Just what they needed to hear. Be of good cheer. I mean, how do you suppose that sounded in the owner of the ship and the guy who had his cargo in there? How do you suppose that felt? Be of good cheer. For there shall be no loss of any man's life among you, but of the ship. Now that's good news. I mean, when you consider the substance of that, the only thing that really matters in life is life. Your stuff can't take nothing with you, nothing you can enjoy. I mean, you can load your casket up with all your goodies, but you ain't going to, for what? Stuff does not matter in the fury of the storm. It just doesn't. But he said, nobody's going to lose their life. And the reason why you can say that in verse 23, we come again to that profound mention of where God was at while this storm was going on. In verse number 23, there stood by me this night the angel of God. They can quibble over the identity. I'm not up for quibbling. You quibble with the pastor when he comes back. It's up. You do what you want if you think it's necessary. He's better equipped to give you a theological conclusion there. There stood by me this night the angel of God, whose I am and whom I serve. Now, Paul didn't serve any angel, any creature. Paul served God alone. So if you want to talk about identity, sit there. That's who came. And here's what that angel said. Fear not, Paul, thou must be brought before Caesar, and lo, God hath given thee all them that sail with thee. You see how significant it is for the presence of one Christian person to have a profound collateral effect upon everybody around them. Your neighbors, your family members, total strangers. Not one person's going to die. He says, sirs, and here we go. Here is faith declared, faith defined, and then we will see faith displayed. Verse 25. You can go to a textbook if you want. You can get a theological textbook and have the guy, have 9,000 guys give you their definition of what faith is. All good, all good. If you're looking for a diploma, they're all good. But I like simplicity. Here we have it. Sirs, be of good cheer. Second time he says that. Now he puts the meat to that. For I believe God. That's where he got the information from. I believe God that it shall be even as it was told me. Now, you don't need to search any further, wider, or deeper than right there when somebody asks you about your faith. I believe God that it shall be even as it was told me. What was told me? Well, Jesus is coming again. And before he left, he said, I go to prepare a place for you. I will come again and receive you unto myself. And I believe God that it shall be even as he said. And when he finally left earth and ascended into heaven, the scriptures say that this same Jesus shall so come in like manner as you have seen him go. I believe God. I believe that the trumpet will sound, the dead in Christ will rise first, and we which are alive and remain, that could be today, shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to be with the Lord in the air. So shall we ever be with the Lord. I believe God. Don't care what else happens. I don't care how fierce the storms come. Channel 2 can put up the mass of water coming at us with the tornadoes spinning